What's up, guys? JP back at you once again, bring you guys day number 23 in my 8th annual 31 Days of Horror. So for today's review, we're going with Cry Wolf from the year 2005. So I have seen this film one time before, but I don't remember. It was when it came out, so 15 years ago. Now, I've had this in my collection for quite a while and I've just never got to it. So that's kind of what I've been doing, just picking stuff that, you know, I've had for a long time and haven't got to, stuff that piqued my interest a little bit. Always kind of wanted to revisit this one. I remembered it was set in a school. It's about all I remembered. And I remembered the killer with the ski mask. But anyway, so 2005 was a very interesting time for horror films because it's when technology really started to be put into the films even more. Like, we have its early infancy, or actually like the embryonic stage of the 90s and the later 90s, and this is sort of its infancy stage where it's sort of starting to blossom a little bit. It's kind of crazy how far we've come in 15 years just in terms of technology, because this film looks really dated now and it hasn't really been that long, so in the grand scheme of things, that's kind of interesting to think about. But this film, like, reeks of the mid-2000s. Like, it has, like, a few tropes that you remember from back then, and it's just funny because it has, like, that Saw vibe to it, which I'll get to in a little bit. But let's get into the plot here. So it follows a kid who goes to a new prep school. It's like this prestigious prep school. There he meets a group of students who play this game called Cry Wolf, where the shepherd, designated like sort of the leader, puts a mark on the chest of one of the students secretly, and then it's up to the other students in a group to figure out who has the mark by asking questions and calling someone out. If the person's called out, they have to leave, they're out of the game, and eventually the last person left will be the winner of the money. And they play this game, kind of interesting, but meanwhile there was a murder in the neighboring town, or I guess it was the campus, and the group of students think, what if we played Cry Wolf with the whole school, and we basically hoaxed that there's a serial killer at the school and they're going to strike and kill more students. So they take the murder that happened at the school and they expand upon it with this hoax email. They kind of get in trouble for it, but then they think they might have sent the email to the real killer, which gave him ideas to be a killer, a serial killer. So it's kind of that. They use this technology aspect with the email. It's very much a like whodunit sort of film where, you know, more pieces are getting unraveled as the film goes on. Like I said, it feels very much, it like reeks of the early or the mid 2000s. It just feels so mid 2000s. It's really funny. Even like the like film look, you know, the color correction and stuff feels like independent films of the 2000s or the mid 2000s. But I don't think this was actually that low of a budget. It actually made it had $1 million budget, and I think it made like 30 some million, so it did well. It's kind of funny because nobody really talks about it. I don't remember this being a very popular film when it came out, but it did well. So Iggy Pop's in this. He plays the teacher. There's also like a romantic relationship going on between the kid's love interest and the teacher. So there's that. I actually really enjoyed this movie, but maybe not for all the right reasons. Like, I enjoyed it in the sense that I thought it was kind of ridiculous. I think this movie is trying to be too smart for its own good. It's trying to do too many things, and it's trying to be very, you know, ahead of you. And with that, it kind of trips itself up, and it becomes very convoluted. There's actual reveals in this film where I'm like, what the hell? Like, I'm just like, come on. Like, it's too complex. The storyline is too complex for its own good. it had some stuff going for it, but it really feels like an afterthought of Saw. It feels like it was influenced by Saw. Saw came out a year before this. I think there would have been time. This is the full screen edition. It is the full screen edition. That's weird. Why does this even exist? That was another thing of the mid-2000s. You had full screen. But I think that this film was heavily influenced by Saw. I had to imagine that the filmmakers had seen it, because even during the reveal, the music that's playing sounds like a Saw ripoff, and that whole scene feels like a Saw ripoff moment. It's like, dun-na, dun-na, you know, that whole thing. I mean, it doesn't sound exactly like that, but you get the point. I still managed to enjoy this movie. It's an easy watch. It's definitely a product of its time, and it's fascinating to look back and see what kind of films were being made then, because I'm very familiar with the 80s, I'm very familiar with the 70s, I'm very familiar with the 90s, but honestly the era in which I grew up in, honestly like least familiar with. I'm very familiar with the 2010s, but this era, 2000 to 2009, not really that familiar with it. I've seen the big heavy hitters, but it's going to be interesting to watch more films from this era, which I will be doing. If you follow the podcast, you know why. So that is Cry Wolf. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6 out of 10. It's really not that good of a movie, but I did enjoy it.